Once upon a time, many years ago, there was a very special man named Daniel. Daniel was a faithful servant of God, and even though he was just a young man, he loved God more than anything else in life. One day, Daniel was taken away from his home and family and taken to a far-off land called Babylon. Babylon was a huge empire with lots of gold and silver, beautiful buildings, and a mighty army, but it was also full of people who worshipped false gods and didn't believe in the true God. When they first arrived, Daniel and some of his friends were scared. They weren't sure what would happen to them in this strange new place. But Daniel knew that God would be with him, so he wasn't too worried. Daniel and his friends were taken to a big palace where they were taught all about the ways of Babylon. They learned a language and customs, and they also had to forget about their old god and worship the Babylonian gods instead. This was very hard for Daniel, but he never gave up. He prayed to God every day, even in secret. It didn't take long for Daniel to become one of the most important people in the kingdom. He was smart and honest, and everyone wanted him on their team. This made the other leaders in Babylon very angry. They were jealous of Daniel, because he was always chosen for the most important jobs. The leaders couldn't stand the fact that someone from another country was more respected than they were. So they came up with a plan to get rid of him once and for all. They went to see the king and told him that Daniel was planning a rebellion against him. The king was furious and he decided to punish Daniel severely. He threw Daniel into a deep pit filled with hungry lions and closed the entrance with a heavy stone door. Daniel had done nothing wrong, but now he was trapped in the lion's den and nobody knew if he would survive. That night, the king couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about Daniel and wondering if he had made the right decision. In the morning, he felt sick to his stomach. He hadn't eaten or drunk anything the whole night before. When the sun came up, the king got up and hurried over to the lion's den. He was afraid to open the door, but he had to know what had happened to Daniel. As he got closer, he heard a noise coming from inside the den. It sounded like someone was talking to Daniel. The king was confused. Who could be in the den with Daniel? Was he being punished alone, or did someone else have to suffer with him? Before he could think about it anymore, he opened the door and stepped inside. To his surprise, he saw Daniel sitting on a rock inside the den, and he looked happy. The king couldn't believe his eyes. He thought that Daniel would be dead, but here he was, alive and well. The king asked Daniel, "You servant of the living God, has your God saved you?" Daniel smiled and said, "Of course, my God could have saved me from the lions, but that wasn't the only miracle. You see, when I arrived at the den, those lions weren't hungry. My God had sent his angel and shut their mouths." The king was amazed. He couldn't believe what Daniel had told him, but he knew that something miraculous had happened. He had seen the door to the den was sealed tight, but when he had come back to check on Daniel, it was wide open, and there was Daniel sitting right in the middle of the den with the lions. Daniel wasn't hurt at all. The king asked Daniel how he had survived the night, and Daniel explained what had happened. He told the king that an angel from God had shut the mouths of the lions, so they would unhurt him. The king was so happy to hear this. He thanked Daniel for reminding him that there was a God in heaven who still cared about people. He knew that he had made a mistake by throwing Daniel into the den, and he promised to never do anything like that again. From that day on, the king treated Daniel even better than before. He made him one of his top officials and trusted him to take care of the entire kingdom. Everyone was happy for Daniel. They had seen how brave he was when he prayed to God, even though it could cost him his life. But not everyone was happy about what had happened. The jealous leaders were furious that Daniel had survived the night. They couldn't believe that he was still alive, and they wanted the king to punish him again. But the king would not listen. He knew that Daniel was innocent, and he didn't want to make the same mistake twice. Instead, the king did something even better. He ordered the jealous leaders to be thrown into the lion's den, and they suffered the same fate as Daniel. After this, everyone in Babylon knew that the king would protect Daniel no matter what. They also learned that it wasn't a good idea to mess with someone who believed in God. The story of Daniel and the lions teaches us that no matter what happens in life, we should never stop believing in God. If we trust in God and pray to Him every day, He will help us through our problems. Even if things seem impossible, we should never give up hope. In the story, Daniel was thrown into the lion's den, but he didn't panic. He knew that God would help him, and he prayed 3 times a day while he waited for a miracle. In the end, Daniel was proven right. An angel from God appeared and shut the mouths of the lions, so they couldn't hurt him. This story also teaches us that God is just and will punish those who try to hurt His people. Daniel's enemies thought they could get away with what they did, but God had a different plan. They ended up in the lion's den themselves, and had to face the consequences of their actions. Finally, the story of Daniel and the lioness den reminds us that God loves to honor those who honor Him. Daniel was a faithful servant of God, and he never stopped believing in God no matter what happened. In the end, God rewarded Daniel's faith and made him one of the most powerful men in Babylon. If we want God to bless us, we need to remember this. If we honor God and follow His laws, He will honor us and protect us from our enemies. I hope you enjoyed the story of Daniel in the lion's den. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the story and what you learned from it. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.